Next up, we get to talk about one of the most important and useful elements. It's really a collection of elements in HTML, which is forms. Forms are all over the place, and in the next few videos, we'll learn how to create them. In this video, we're going to focus on the form element. So the form element itself doesn't really show up as anything at all. It's more of a shell or a container that will contain a bunch of individual form controls like text inputs and password inputs and buttons and checkboxes, but we group them together in a form. You can kind of see this on the diagram on the left side. The thick red border would be the form. It is a container. By the way, this border is not supposed to actually be on the website. I added that in after the fact. Anyway, that would be the form, and then the pink boxes represent individual controls or individual inputs. So, here's an example of a form, a nice looking form. We've got different inputs to type in an email, a full name, a password, right? And this is a different type of input. We get these dots. You've almost certainly seen that before, versus this input here where we get text and you can see what I'm typing. We've got a button as well, although it's disabled right now. Here's another example of a form. This is a website called The Athletic. Very good sports journalism. Anyway, we've got a form here with a collection of inputs. Text input, text. This is an email input, which is very similar to text. We'll learn more about that. And then a password input where you can't see what you're typing. And then we also have this right here. This is something called a radio button, where I can select one from a group of things, in this case, just two different subscription plans. But forms are also simpler. Here's a simple form on Reddit, the search form up top. If I want to search for something, like my favorite type of silky chickens, I type it into this element here. This is a text input, but there is a form that surrounds it. There's a container. And if I inspect, you'll actually see that. There's a lot of stuff here, but I'll try and highlight it for you. Form, right there. This form element is what makes, it's one of the things that makes this all work. So the form element is what we're going to focus on for now. It's the container, the box, the thing that all of your inputs are put inside of. They're grouped together. But it's not just about grouping content together just to have it grouped for no reason. The form element also dictates where the form data should be sent when the form is submitted. So we can specify, send this data from the form to my server, or send it to, I'll show you a demo. We could send data to Reddit server if we wanted to. We can send data, I won't say wherever, but we have a lot of flexibility. And that form element, the parent form element we define that we wrap around everything else, that element is where we specify how the data should be sent and where. So before we go on, I will make a new form or a new HTML page called forms.html. I'll do my standard exclamation point tab. Let's go with forms demo here, and I'll put an H1 that just says forms or forms demo or something like that. And I'm going to open this up in my browser if I can get there. So I'll just hit back here, forms.html. I'm just viewing the folder that it's inside of. But again, double click the file on your desktop or wherever it is, or drag it into the browser. And I'm going to add my first form. So if I just type form and hit tab with Emmet, we get our opening and closing tag, and we get this empty attribute called action. We're going to focus on that pretty much right now. But first, I just want to show you, if I make this empty form and I refresh, we don't see anything at all. It's an empty container. But this action attribute is very important. It specifies where the data should be sent when the form is submitted. So this diagram on the left is my best attempt at illustrating this. It is a box. That's the form itself is the container, and it has a label on it that says, send this data to myserver.com, or send it to /search, or whatever the URL is, some destination to send the information to. At this point, all we know is basic HTML. We don't know how to create a server and how to deal with form data and JavaScript and all of that. But we have to start by just explaining this so that when we get to those topics, it will make a bit more sense. So what we can do is piggyback off of somebody else's server. For example, on Reddit. This form, this search form here that I showed you, has an action attribute already set, /search. So if you look at the URL we're currently on, it's reddit.com/r/chickens. Now, when I submit this form, And let me just hit enter to do that. Watch the URL. Notice here it says /search. That is the destination for this form data. It is this label. Send this data to /search. So I'm going to hit enter. I have Silky typed in here. And notice where we went, where we are, reddit.com/search. Now there's also this thing at the end. We'll learn more about how or what this is. It says Q equals Silky, which is exactly what I typed in here. If I type something else, like a different type of chicken, let's do Polish chicken, and I hit enter. You can see that's showing up in the URL as well. Polish chickens, by the way, are very funny looking, adorable. Anyway, you can see though that that action /search is where the form took us to, and it also submitted the information, the form data. In this case, it's a very simple form. There's one input, just this one text input, and it takes that piece of information and sends it. But there are more complicated forms that have definitely far more inputs, and all that data will be sent together via an HTTP request. So even though we haven't learned a ton about HTTP requests, let's go through this process one more time and talk about what's actually happening behind the scenes. So we've got that form. We already have seen it has this action set to /search. And if I type something in, let's just go with Silky again, and I hit enter to submit that form, an HTTP request will be fired off to /search. Now, /search is not a website I can just go to, right? This is relative to where we currently are, which is reddit.com. So it's going to go to reddit.com/search. It's basically sending a request to a Reddit endpoint to /search, and then it's passing in our data right there. Q equals Silky. So Reddit server realizes, this is the job of a server, oh, you're asking for /search and you provided me the query of Silky. Well, let me go search my database, or probably a bunch of databases. Let me go find the images and the results and all the posts that I need to combine into this web page. And then I'll send the web page back to you, which is what it did. It sent this web page back, and we're viewing it here. So it's just sending a request in the same way that I could forego this form entirely. I could go to this URL myself and say, instead of Q equals Silky, how about Q equals, I don't know, chocolate. And what will I see here? I just searched Reddit for chocolate without actually typing into the form myself. It's not a very UI or a user-friendly way of doing it, but it's the exact same mechanism. The form is just a way to get here, at least in this situation. So we'll learn a lot more about forms and submitting them once we actually have somewhere to submit them to. Right now, we don't really. We're just using Reddit as an example. So we haven't learned a whole lot about HTTP and how these forms work and how we handle them, but remember that when you submit a form, a HTTP request will be sent. And we control where that request goes to using this attribute called action, and we control which type of HTTP method. You really don't need to care about that right now, but I need to mention it. We control that using an attribute called method. So if we look at this form, it has action search, method equals get. So the two terms you may hear are get and post. Those are two values for an HTTP method. But for now, let's just do the Men in Black memory erase thing. Don't worry about that. I just wanted to mention it. Once we get to handling forms, that will make more sense. Okay, so we can make our form. I can give it an action. Let's say anything really, but I could do /tacos. We're not going to see anything at all until I put some stuff in here, which is what the next video will be about. What goes in a form, or what can go in a form. There are lots of options, but all you need to remember for now is that the form acts as this thing that groups together inputs and then submits them together to some specified destination with a little shipping label. Okay, so next up, we'll start with some inputs.